Okay, so as I said, number one rule, clean. Keep everything as clean as you possibly can with your incubator. You're gonna have a lot of mess every time you hatch. Anytime you have these little guys coming out, they add a lot of fluff and a lot of mess. You see all this up in here, all that fluff back in there where humidity goes through, and down on the bottom here. A lot of eggshell, a lot of things like that falling down here on the bottom. You put the bottom on that has the water tray, a lot of that mess will go in there. But a little tip, you're doing this to make your life a lot easier. Right here, this bottom, shelf paper. You put that on there and your cleanup is 3 times easier. So that's one thing that we'll do here to get that opened up to clean. Another one, we'll take our sensor wires and remove them from the side here, just to keep water from getting into the ends of the connectors. So once I got them all pulled out of there, we'll set them off up here to the side. Things you want to make sure you're doing is making sure everywhere gets cleaned out, and I mean everywhere. You're going to be looking at some small spaces that you may not think about up in here, some ventilation area where your water comes in to make the humidity from the ultrasonic humidifier. Down on the bottom you got some humidity area. Up in your cracks, things like this, where you may not think about it, but getting all that humidity and things in there like that can cause a little bit of bacteria. Up in your door seals, you see how much fluff gets in there, and that's all got to come out. Not much more than that, just making sure you're getting around the backs of here, and then you're going to come around to the back here, make it easier to open up, and on a deep clean, we have all this up in here that you know is a mess inside. We will take these covers off and clean everything down inside. Spots you're going to want to be careful of are up in here with your sensor, and of course up top here. You don't want to get any of this wet. But when you do clean this, this is going to be a spot you're going to want to make sure is clean as well. You're going to take this off and make sure that you don't have any dust, dirt, chick fluff or anything like that up in here. There are 2 of these. You want to make sure both of them are clean. If it has anything on it, it can change what it's reading on the inside of the incubator. So the start of this for me is grabbing my hose and carefully going in, hosing down all the shelves, all the sides, making everything wet. So then after I spray everything down and get it soaking, my next thing is going to be to start taking off this back section cover here. Have a couple screws you can take out, and that cover here should come right off. So after taking the cover screws out, what you're going to do is gently remove this, and you'll see access to the fan back here, a lot easier to clean. And taking this, you can go soak it or clean it off however you want to. More or less just use the hose and scrub it with some sponge, and then after everything's done, I'll use my water and bleach mixture. The other thing you'll notice, if you don't clean out these areas all the time, you'll get a buildup in on your fans that when it rotates, I'm not sure if you hear it or not, kind of hear it scrape a little bit, you'll get that catching on there, and your fan, while the incubator's running, you'll hear it make a grinding noise, or after a while something will get stuck on there or fly off of here and unbalance the fan, and you'll hear it buzzing really loud or humming when you're incubating. The things you want to be careful of when you're in here doing this stuff is the wires over here, this part right here. I don't know exactly what that is. I'm sure I could figure it out, but just want to be careful of everything in here. You don't want to bend anything, break anything. So this is a very important area for cleaning. After I'm done with it, what I'll do is very lightly spray my bleach and water. So after everything's done soaking and we're done cleaning the fan, we're just going to take a sponge, a little bit of water and soap on it, and just start scrubbing our way from the top down. You get as much as you can in the corners, in behind your door, and when you do your door, try and get as much as you can in the seams of your door. These will be spots that you don't think about, that things do kind of bacteria-wise hang in there. And your main spots you'll know down here because you're going to see it. But in the creases, in your cracks in here, when you're done cleaning everything, my suggestion is spray a little bit of bleach and water in there, and then we'll show you what we do after that to get that all dried and cleaned out. So now we're done cleaning everything. What I'll do is take that bleach and water mixture that I said before, and I'll just spray all around the whole thing. Up around the cracks of the door, the shelves, all of it. And also make sure you get certain spots in where your humidifier goes. Spray in there. Back in here you have a vent. Make sure I spray in there. You have a spot up here, inside there. And get back behind there. And just make sure you get all the cracks and in behind those seals. After I spray everything with bleach, then I will let it sit out here until it dries off, just because I don't want it walking through, dripping it all inside my house. I'll finish wiping off the outside of it, and then we'll get back into it on the inside. Now you have your incubator cleaned up and ready to go. You're still not quite done yet. So with the CT series that we have, I will take and plug it in and not put on the side attachment for the humidity. Also for your shelves or trays to rotate, will not hook any of that up. All I'm going to do is turn it on. You're going to let it start up, go through everything, and with that, I'm going to let this run for a full 24 hours and let the inside dry out. And if you do have any bacteria or anything left in there, all that will hopefully die off with everything drying out as much as it will. So we'll just let it sit and we'll go to the next step. Okay, here we are on tip number 2, rotation. We're going to add in setting in with the rotation as well. Just because there are certain ways you do want to set your eggs in your incubator. Some you'll have the trays like we have here, where they're going to be laying in the egg tray like this. Other ones you have are side hatching incubators. If you've seen them, there's ones like the Nurture Right or the Brinsea, whatever, I can't remember the name of them. But either one is fine. It's whatever you decide, whatever's going to work for you on hatching. do set our eggs in this tray, we're going to try and be aware of keeping our eggs with a little bit of an angle to them. We don't set our eggs straight up and down. You can. It's, you know, that's up to you. I'd like to set them a little more sideways. I feel like that gives the air sac a little more area to develop better on its tilt like this. So instead of having more of a rounded air sac get larger, nice round on the top, when you do it like this, they'll have an area more off to the side. So when you do lay it in the trays, they'll have a better opening up here to pip through. Things you're going to want to avoid are misformed eggs, eggs that are flat on their sides, too many wrinkles in them, eggs that have cracks, eggs that are too large, like this one here. You see how much larger it is than this egg. This won't be hatched. This is a double yolk egg, but one like this, perfectly fine. So when you're setting your eggs, one thing you're going to want to make sure that you're doing right away is rotating your eggs. The first 10 days, it is very important for your eggs to rotate. With your other incubators that you have to rotate on your own, a lot of people say 2 to 4 hours for rotating. It's not my suggestion at all. We do maybe once a day, twice a day if you really have to. But the problem is, if you're lifting your lid to your incubator, all you're doing is letting your humidity and temperature out. To most people, you're doing a full 90-degree turn. We don't do that. I've never seen a hen do that. I've never seen a hen take an egg and move it a full 90 degrees or 180 degree rotate, however you want to go about it. So when you do incubators like this, all we do, quick little shake in the hand, little roll, set it down. Try and do it as quickly as possible. With doing your rotation, that's pretty much allowing your egg white and yolk to get into a spot where it keeps getting distributed, so the chick has a better chance of forming properly. If you don't do it the first 10 days, you're looking at problems like a stuck chick getting attached to the shell. Other things can happen where your chick doesn't develop properly. You're looking at things like splay leg or other deformities could happen more likely than if you would do it the right way. Do the rotation the way you're supposed to. I'm not quite sure how often this incubator rotates the eggs, but they work for what they need. They're great for a hobby hatcher. These trays here from the hatching time, they will do a full rotation. It's a little over 3 hours. The only exception to the rule of rotating your eggs right away is if you buy shipped eggs, a lot of times your membrane inside the egg will get damaged. So when you do put them in the incubator, let's say this one here, with your egg laying on the side, and you get your air sac ruptures. Let's not say rupture. Let's say it actually gets detached. And what happens is, normally your air sac starts off up here on the top of the egg. What will end up happening when your egg gets shipped, it'll get damaged where it detaches a little bit, maybe goes this way, or we you've seen them that the whole egg in itself, the membrane has been detached. If you set your eggs when you first get them, do not rotate, do not put them in the incubator. Let them sit 24 to 48 hours standing upright, and just like that. That'll help that membrane heal up a little bit. Now, the other problem is when you have them in an incubator that is the side roller, if you have a detached air sac that ends up being that big, and every time it rolls and does its full turn, you're looking at damaging this area more and more every time it goes into a rotate. And these are not always the most gentle on the rotating. So next thing you know, you have this whole area gets detached. Well, when you go into lockdown, that membrane ends up being too big, and then that chick inside cannot pip through that membrane. So you have to do emergency helping the chick out if you catch it, but you got to catch it in time or your chick ends up shrink wrapped. Now, the nice thing about the hatching time incubator or your upright incubators that have this type of tray, if your air sac is here, your normal back and forth on this type of incubator goes nice and slow, nice and easy. And if you end up with one that's damaged, as slow as it goes, it doesn't cause more damage. So then basically all you're doing is waiting until you go into lockdown to make sure that this air sac has grown the proper way. So you want to try and set it so if it gets damaged this way here, you want to try and make sure you're setting your egg off to the side like this. So if you set it off to the side like that, you're not going to cause more damage as it's going this way. Now, if you set it this way, you could get a little bit more if it's tilting this way, just by the force of the egg pushing against here and causing more split. So, as this grows, then you get it to grow the same exact way on that side. And then that way, when it does go into lockdown, and this whole area is shrunk down to the proper way, the chick has a better opportunity to pip out of that area. So you're going to lay that egg down into your hatching area with that air sac up. So when you're setting eggs, if they're your own eggs that you know they're fresh, you know the day that they were laid, and you're not getting them shipped to you, my rule on hatching eggs is I do not go any more than 7 days old. 10 is stretching it. I have done 10. I don't like going further than that. After 10 eggs, there's no, or 10 days old, there is no more hatching that egg. I will stop, because you end up with just an egg that is already dried out more. So you want to try and keep them, and this is my opinion, as close to the same day as you do every other egg. We do not do same day laid, so I will start for day 3. So I will not hatch this egg until I know this is a 3rd day egg. So between 3 and 7 has been the best hatch that we've got. And then the last tip that I will say as far as setting and rotating goes, make sure you mark every egg what day you set it or what day you hatch, whatever your combination of lettering wording is going to be for your eggs, to know when that's going to go into lockdown or when it's going to hatch or when you set it. Just because
too many times you set a thing of eggs and then you go, well, I can sneak 2 in 3 days later, 5 days later, and then you forget that's when it was, and it has nothing written on it. It just gets to be a mess if you don't do it the proper way. And the other, this is one I'm very strongly convinced of, is pencil. If you are going to write on your eggs, do not use marker. This is my opinion. I will stand by this. Using marker, everybody wants to believe and knows how porous an egg is, how touchy it is to hatch eggs. The slightest degree off, the slightest rotation wrong, the slightest humidity wrong, you can get bacteria in it. If you get a chip, a crack, or whatever, you know that egg's going to end up going bad, or you have to wax the egg or something like that. If you're using marker on a porous surface, what chemicals are in this marker? Does anybody know what's in this? Does anybody know what it's going to do to the bloom on this egg? I know I don't. I can't say what it is, but I know anytime that I've had eggs that, and I'm talking a large hatch, I've done large hatches where we set 180 eggs and we've used pencil and we have nearly 100% hatch, where I've had marker put on an egg and we've gotten as low as 50% hatch. So, I mean, it's not for me. I will not do it. I know there's going to be people that say, oh, well, I've never had problems with marker. I use pencil. I can't see what's written on the egg. I just have to use marker because my eggs are too dark. I can't see what it is. This is one of my darker eggs. We have darker. We've written on them. I can see. It's not the easiest, but I can see on that egg. Again, that will be up to you. You make your choice. I know what our choice is. You're not going to convince me differently, same way as I may not convince you differently. But here we are. This is what we're stating as far as tip. Okay, here we are on part number 3, humidity and temperature. Is probably one of the longest and most argued of hatching, because there's so many different ways to do hatching. If you ask, let's say 100 people, what do you set your incubator at on humidity and temperature, you're probably going to get at least 50 different answers from 100 different people. It's not only because everybody has a different opinion, but a lot of time if you have the same opinion, your incubators could be wrong on the temperatures themselves. So where I set mine, and this is not where I usually do my temperatures, but say 99.5, 40% humidity, if you calibrate that with temperature and hydrometer, you're looking at failure as well. So you see the difference in it. 98.1 on temperature, where the incubator is 99.5, and 41% humidity, where this one's set at 40. So that would say your temperatures are off at least, almost a degree and a half. So if somebody says I set mine at 99.8, and somebody else says, well, I set mine at 98.5, they could be agreeing but still disagreeing at the same time because your calibration on your incubators are wrong. Very important, keep checking your calibration on your incubators. Just because it was fine one day doesn't mean it's fine another day. Some of them you'll set the calibration, and if you unplug it to clean it to go do another hatch, some of those cheaper incubators will reset themselves and the calibration will be off again. Very important, check your temperatures and humidity numerous times. So one thing we do is obviously
we get our gauge and recheck it with that. I do not use just one gauge, and I will show you a reason why. Because just like your incubators, not everything is set to be the proper way from factory. So I'll try and do this quick without dropping too many temperatures and humidities. But let's say we have another one. Here's a meat thermometer that I use. When I pulled it out, it was 97 degrees. Well, that's different than the 98.1 degree. If we go back in, grab another one, humidity 30, temperature 98, well, 97.9. So there's another difference in. And then the last one we have is a temperature gauge, or a weather station that I use, that I have hooked up to the outside, and you can use it inside here to check as well. Right here, we're looking at 98.4 and 33% humidity. So now we have 5 different temperatures, 4 different humidities. Which one's right? Well, that comes into the problem of why we're discussing this. Most likely, neither of them are 100% accurate. What you're looking at is calibrated for whatever it was at factory and such. So my bottom line is, don't trust any of your gauges. My solution is, and I'll show you a picture of what we have ourselves, what we do, is we get a bunch of cheap, kind of like these, right? Maybe 6, 12, however many you want into what you're doing, depends on how big your incubator is. One like this, we could set up, even if they were all calibrated to the same, we could set up 12 of them, and I can open this now because it's not really that big of a deal. We could set 12 of them inside this incubator, different spots on the shelves, and you will come up with different temperatures and different humidities on each one. That is because most every incubator you have will have a cold spot or will have a hot spot. Reason being, like this one here, nothing wrong with this one, but right here in this spot is where your fan is, that's where your humidity is going in, that's where your heat and humidity is coming out. So it's going to blow it all out through the top, and it's going to circulate in through here. Not every spot is going to be 100% the same temperature, because you have spots like maybe right here is going to be a little colder, or in the back over here it's going to be a little warmer, because that's where all your heat and humidity is going out for the air circulation. So that's why I say get a lot of them and test your cold spots, test your hot spots, where are they at, test your gauges in different spots. So if you get 6 and you put 1 on each shelf, write down your numbers, write down what everything is, and then switch the gauges and put each one on a different shelf. Mark what they are, where they were on a piece of paper on your last one, and basically just kind of do what I did here, where you're writing your incubator down, your temperature of what it is, one you used, and move it around on a shelf and see if it still gives you the same reading, how much difference is it, and then you can ballpark average which one is right and calibrate your incubator to what you feel the temperatures are correct on it. So then, with all that said, then it is probably the question, what do I do for my humidities, and what options are there? One option is your dry hatch, and then the other one is a wet hatch. So a dry hatch is basically
you're not adding any liquid, any water to your incubator while it's in the 17-day incubation process. So then you would add your water at the end during lockdown on day 18, and that is where you would then jack your humidity up to the 60 to 65%. With the dry humidity, with the dry hatch, you would put it no lower than 15, no higher than 30. So if you live in a dry climate, most likely you'll have to add a little bit of water, so you can keep it at the 15%, but not too much that you would put it at the 30%. So there's positive, there's negatives. It's a lot depends on where you live. If I would do a dry hatch, these incubators in the climate where we are in here in Pennsylvania, I could take all the humidity, all the water away, and we would still hang out probably around 25 to 30% humidity, and that is without adding any water at all. So I technically wouldn't have to add anything, but say we lived in Arizona in a drier climate where your humidity on the outside is probably well below 30, you may have to add water to your incubator through that incubation time, because it would probably go down around 10%. And if you do that, well, your eggs are going to dry out and you're going to end up with shrink wrap chicks. So the other way with the wet hatch is you're going to have your humidity around 40 to 50% for the first 17 days, and then on day 18 you would then also put it up to 60 to 65%. Now again, these are the average numbers. We do not do any of that. We do it a little bit differently, and it's hard to explain how I would do it, just for the simple fact of when I use these incubators, I'm having to fight with, say I have 2 shelves filled that have already been incubating for 5 days. Then I have another 2 shelves filled that have been incubating for 12 days. And then on the bottom 2 shelves, maybe I have a set that's hatching, or is 2 days away from hatch, or you know what I'm saying. So my humidity and temperatures I change constantly throughout my hatching. What I will say is mine is a little bit different than everybody else that I've ever heard of. My hatch kind of goes based off of what my hens are doing. So my hens, the same as everybody else's hens, are sitting on those eggs for 21 days average. I have never seen a chicken hop off the nest, go jump in a pool of water on 2 days before they hatch, a day before they hatch, and then go jump on those eggs. I've not seen a single hen raise humidity, lower humidity, worry about their humidity. So my average, if I was to fill this one incubator up, my humidity is going to be somewhere around 45% consistently. I will set it, I will leave it there, but I'm also going to be evaluating how the eggs look. I'm not going to be opening and closing the door every day, because that is a huge mistake if what you're doing is opening and closing, because you're knocking your temperatures down, you're knocking your humidities down, or even raising your humidity up if you're doing a dry hatch. So my rule, close the doors, keep them closed, do not look in them, do not mess with them unless you absolutely have to. You put them in lockdown, you don't look at them until you know you have a chick hatch, and you know, because you'll hear it making noise. So from that point of hearing it make noise, I will not open that incubator again for 48 hours. Because if you do, you have chicks that are in here already trying to hatch, you open that up and a blast of dry air goes in. That dries the egg membrane out. Shrink wrap chicks. So that's that. So 45% is about what I do, and I keep it pretty steady. I will evaluate. So as everybody knows who has candled eggs and has done this, you get your air cell. Starts on average about there. And in day 7 is about when I'll then go in and do a candling to make sure everything is fertile. If it's not fertile, and I say day 7, that's when I check my fertility. I'm not worried about eggs popping or breaking or rotten eggs or anything like that, because I know my eggs are fresh. Well, between 3 and 10 days. So I know there's not going to be any eggs that are going bad. I've already candled them before I put them in, because I'm making sure everything is good, doesn't have any cracks, or there's no problems inside. So again, day 7, I go in, I'm going to want to see that air cell has probably gone about this much bigger. That's going to be day 7. Now if that air cell, let's say, goes down, I'm sorry my drawing is horrible, but comes down around that far, day 7, I know I have a problem. It's gone too far. So I'm going to check every single egg really quick, and I'm going to be looking for everything, either it's here or in between here and here. So if this is the worst one, this is the best one, well, I have to adjust my humidity. What am I going to adjust it for? If everything's down around here, I'm going to add maybe 5 to 10% humidity just to slow that shrinking process down. So, as I said, here we are. And it's going to depend on the size of your eggs. So your eggs, we have different size. Make sure I get it in the camera here. Different size eggs. So your air pockets are going to be a little different on each one. So if you go here and you have that size, you're going to want to keep checking, and it's going to be different for everybody and their eggs. You're going to want to make sure you're doing everything, studying and getting everybody else's opinions on what they do. But again, this is what we do, and this is how we like to do it, and we get really great hatch rates. So day 7, and then from there, I may check on day 12, maybe 13. At least I try to. And by that time, that's about as low as I'm going to want to watch my air cell go to on day 13. Right? So if that goes all the way around straight across on day 13, it's pretty average around, it's pretty good. What you're going to want to look for when you go into lockdown is you're going to get a little dip down on one part of it. So that part that dips down on day 18, when you go for lockdown, you want to see a little more straight line here and then a dip down. And when you get that dip down, you know that's where they're pipping out of. You don't want them to pip out of here. You don't want them to pip down here. You're looking for this area. This is their sweet spot. And when they do that, everything else is going to plane out when they pip, because they're going to sit in there probably about 24 hours or so, 24 to 48 hours after the pip. And the rest of this is going to get loosened up. All the veins that are up in here are going to then slowly get absorbed. Here I have a duck egg that I can show you a little bit of what I'm talking about with the dip down and where it's going to end up pipping. I'll turn the light off here to see if you can see it. So if it was straight on, you would see the line would continue to go across this way. But this is the dip down that I'm talking about, of where it's going to end up pipping. And I can't tell you exactly what day this is on right now. I didn't look, but there you can kind of see what I'm talking about with the dip. I believe this still has a week to go. So anyway, with that being said, I don't necessarily think anybody's going to believe that my way is the way to go. Mine is, as I said, a little bit different than most people do. Find what works for you. There's nothing wrong with trying to experiment, trying to find what is going to solve your problems if you're having some hatching problems. Some problems that you will see, though, with hatching at the end is problems with, let's say, splay leg, or your eggs hatch and your chicks are basically look like they're stuck in honey. That all will lead to a humidity temperature problem. Some of the things that cause that, as I said, are opening the incubator too much. That's why we try not to open it much at all. People that have to rotate their own eggs, you're looking at having to open that incubator every time you rotate an egg. That is lowering your temperatures and your humidity every time. That's why I kind of question all the time how people are always lifting the lid and rotating their eggs every 2 or 4 hours. It's too much. Definitely don't need to do it that much. The other things are that can cause it with your temperature being too low. A couple degrees off, too low. Say you have your temperature around 97, 98. I know there's some people that say, well, if you lower your temperature, you'll get more boys or girls. I think they're shooting for girls, so you're lowering your temperature down lower. Which, and no, that doesn't work either. That is for alligators and some other lizards I know do that. But it does not work with chickens. Anybody that says that you can lower a temperature or do this to an egg or a rounded top egg or a pointed top egg gives you boys or girls depending on what the egg is or the temperature or humidity is, it's not true. It doesn't work that way. We have not come across anything that states or says or does or anything that will change the gender of an egg. When adding water to get your humidity up at lockdown or any other time, make sure you are adding room temperature or slightly warmer. If you add cold water or hot water, you are going to be looking at a humidity spike or humidity lowering. You put cold water in, you're going to lower your humidity quick and it's not going to recover right away. You put the hot water in, it raises it up really fast, and it might take a while to recover from that. It could put condensation on the eggs. If it does put condensation on the eggs, you're looking at causing more of those problems. But with the, I'm going to get back to the the part with the deformities or problems with the end of hatch. When you have where your chicks look like there's honey in the egg and they're trying to pip, or they're drowning, suffocating in that, you're looking at your temperatures being too low. That's why I say get numerous gauges, check your humidities on every single gauge, average it out, and see what you have going there. That's also going to be included in when you're cleaning out your incubator. Get all the sensors and gauges cleaned off there, because having too much dust or chick fluff on there can cause your temperatures to be off a little bit. The other thing is, if your temperature or your humidity is too high, can cause that as well through the incubation time. So if you're running your incubator at 45 and you're seeing there's, at the end, you're getting that honey texture in an egg, that could be a situation of that. A lot of times you have that if you have to open your incubator a lot of times because you have different eggs at different times, you'll end up with a hatch like that. The other part that does that is if you're not rotating your eggs the first 10 days of incubation. That can cause a lot of that liquid to not be able to come out of the egg through the ventilation. So that, and in the next section of where I say about doing overcrowding, that can cause those problems as well. I said about not adding cold or hot water, but the other type of water you want to make sure you're avoiding is not, if you have city water or well water, the things you have to think about are the chemicals that are in the water. City water has bleach, fluoride, who knows what else chemicals are added to it. So if you're going to use city water, you should probably have some kind of filter that is going to get your water contamination, your minerals and everything down to zero. Really hard to do that. Same as having well water. You're going to have issues with hard water, other types of minerals and things that you can't get out of with a filter. So to combat that, even if you have a well that has a filtration system on or a water softener on, you're still adding chemicals into your water that you're not going to want in there. So, and that'll be the same as after your chicks hatch. You're going to want to be careful with anything, water softeners, city waters, or anything like that that can harm your little ones after they do hatch. Because we do have a lot of people call and ask us, hey, what's wrong with our chicks? We have good, healthy well water. Yeah, it might be okay for humans, but if some of these filters I know use like citric acid, things like that, to filter and soften water, that can be really harmful to your chick. So even things, spring water. This is a natural spring water. Whether it is or not, I don't really know. But I still will not use that. Do not use bottled water that comes from springs, or filtered water from springs, or natural anything bottled water. What you're going to be looking for is, doesn't matter the name, but you're going to be looking for distilled water. That is taken and all minerals are taken out of it. It's 100% clean. That way it helps keep your deposits on your incubator as well down, so you don't have to clean it as much. Definitely water quality in hatching is very, very important. Distilled water, any way you can get it, that's the way you want to go. So with the chemicals in the water, it can also cause problems. It may not happen over time or right away, but over time it could cause your incubators to slowly get bad. So if you had an incubator that was, you know, a 99% hatch rate the first time, over time you could slowly go down to a 97, an 85, or whatever hatch rate. Just really cleanliness and the water that you use, very important. Let's see, I went through all the candling and making sure you're not opening it that much. So in the next part, also talking about the honey texture coming out of excuse me, the egg as they're hatching. Check out the rotation part 2, and in part 5 we'll be talking about hen health and egg health. That will answer a lot of those questions, as well as with, as I said, rotating, ventilation, and just making sure everything is closed and left closed. I know it's hard sometimes when you get a chick that hatches a little early and you're excited. Oh my gosh, look how cute it is. Oh, the poor little thing is lonely. No, that poor little thing is not lonely. It has all its friends and brothers and sisters in that incubator that it's still talking to while it's being hatched out. So they will encourage all your other eggs to hatch. They will talk to that chick that's in this egg and say, come on, come out. You know, keep going. They will be a cheerleader. So keep your chick in there. Let them do their job. So, bottom line, as you heard through talking, how important I feel the humidity and temperatures are Find your own way, what works for you. Read your incubators by your end hatch rate, but don't mess up your end hatch rate by opening it too much at hatch time, trying to take a chick out because you feel bad for it. Feel bad for all the other ones that you ruined hatching by opening up your incubator. Let them in there, let them alone. Let your incubator do its job. It's built the way it is for a reason. Just let it go, let it work. Okay, here we are on part number 4. This is about overcrowding in your incubator. Your overcrowding isn't necessarily a big problem when you're setting your eggs and you're incubating, but more when you get to the lockdown stage. Now this here is all duck eggs, so these are all viable, good to go. This is one I've showed you in a previous video on doing the, I think it was rotation, on how to get the air sac to go the way you want it to by reading the air sac and how far you want it to go down. If you did watch that, I'll get to show you what I mean on that now. I'm going to turn this light off and we will candle it. So I showed you going down around here on how you want your air sac to come down, but now that we're at lockdown, we should be able to see this dipping down more, and that's where you're going to want your pip area. So right in this area is most likely where it's going to pip. So we're 2-3 days away from them hatching totally. So now we see it's dipped down on this side. You can see there, that's the indication that it's going to be pipping here. So when we put it in our incubator, I will always set them a little more upright than laying them flat down. So I'll use the edge of the CT series tray just to set them up all the way around. Now the overcrowding part comes into talking about, because there is only so much ventilation, and yeah, they have a lot of ventilation in these, that I wouldn't necessarily worry too much if the hatch was chicken eggs. But because it's duck eggs, waterfowl, larger eggs like turkey or anything like that, I'm going to want to be a little more aware of how many eggs I set in here. Because if you set too many in, your humidity inside this basket can get a little too wet. And then if it does, you can end up with things where your chicks can't turn inside the egg to do the zip, or when they pip through a spot, you'll get that honey texture coming out of that egg, which indicates your humidity may be up too high. So to help solve that at this time, it's where I said we're going to do the propping of the egg and not so many. You can see it with the light on, but as we keep going, we're going to do it this way. So with this, because I know I do have a lot of space in my incubator, I'm going to thin them out a little bit more. But if I had a crowded space, this many eggs that we have, so 3, 6, 9, 12, I would go up to about 15 in a basket of this with duck eggs. But as far as like I said, with chicken eggs, I wouldn't have a problem with putting more in. There you can see the duck's bill, that's where it's going to pip. So that shows a little bit more of what I'm talking about with this dip down. Now some of these, you see some of the air sacs are a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. Some of them will take a little bit longer, like this one here.
This one's still got a little bit more time. This one will probably take 3 days. But in that 3 days, you're still going to want it to shrink down a little bit. So there, this is what I'm talking about with crowding. I have this many eggs here. I'll put this in another basket just to ensure that I'm getting enough ventilation through everything. It's not having enough ventilation, like I said, with the amber honey-like texture coming out of the egg. You can also get certain other problems, splay leg or something like that. Now, also, when you're doing things, but I ran out of mat. I would normally put a shelf liner in this. Don't have it right now. It's not mandatory. It helps keep things cleaner. Helps a little bit with splay leg, but with ducks, I'm not too concerned with this type tray. Now, with the smaller incubators, say the Nurture Right or the Brincy or the other small incubators that hold about 24 eggs, if I'm doing duck eggs, I will only do half. I will not fill up that incubator with duck eggs. Chicken eggs, again, fine, because they're a little bit smaller. Same as turkey eggs, half of what I normally would do in the incubator and when setting them. So the turkey eggs, as far as it goes in these baskets, I'll probably do about 10 eggs tops. 12 would be stretching, but that helps keep that ventilation free and clear. So again, ventilation, do not overcrowd. You're not too much of a problem overcrowding on your trays during your incubation time, but when you get to lockdown, you may want to half how much you have on this tray. Larger eggs, turkey, goose, duck, anything like that, half it. Chicken, quail, not so much. Pheasant, I wouldn't worry about ventilation problems on trays like this. Well, we're into part 5. This is our last part. We're talking about hen and egg health. A lot of things that you're going to have issues with when you're hatching is the health of the egg, and what you need is healthy hens to have healthy eggs. So some of the things we're talking about are the age of your hen. How old is she? Are those eggs still good coming from the age of your girl? Dietary nutrition, the same as humans, humans have babies, the same with chickens, that you will have a need for certain supplements. So if you're giving a chicken a good layer feed, that may not be enough. You look, with our chickens, a lot of their nutrients they get are from free ranging, same as our geese and other birds. So in my opinion, that's still not enough. That is a good added benefit. But you're still going to want to look at things like your proteins, adding that into if you're hatching. If you have caged birds that they're not getting out free ranging and having the greens and proteins from the bugs that they're finding, you're going to want to supplement mealworms, black soldier fly larvae, other greens, vegetables. A high diet in corns and other grains can cause issues with things like the inside of the egg getting sticky when your chicks are trying to hatch. So there again, we're talking about the honey-like texture when your chicks aren't making it out of hatch that will come out of the egg. If you have a high corn, high grain diet, a lot of things like scratch grains, those are not grains for egg health. Your scratch grains are more for throwing out there a slight nutrition value, but more for a chicken's mental health
for scratching around and doing what a chicken would do in foraging. Other big things are making sure they have very clean water every day, maybe twice a day. You have to clean out their waters. Make sure they have fresh, clean, cool water. Also, some other things you want to add into are making sure you have calcium for your hens. Returning the eggshells back to them if you're eating the eggs are good. But getting oyster shell to make sure those eggs are as healthy as they can be on the shell. That way you're not getting fine cracks in your eggs when you're trying to incubate them or while the hen's trying to lay them. Good thick shell also helps make it easier for the chick to come out of the egg. We keep oyster shell out for the hens so they can freely come get it when they want. It's better than putting it in their feed and forcing them to eat something that is a supplement that they may start seeing as a food and then start maybe picking out too much. On top of the hens' health, you also want to look at having a healthy rooster. Some roosters may not be a good match with your hens. You can pass on bad genetics that you're not even aware of. So if you're getting chicks that aren't hatching out well, not only can that be the hen's fault, but you can also have that as your rooster's fault. If you have chicks that are not surviving through the brooding stage, or even young death in some of your older birds, you may be looking at a possible rooster problem. But it can also be the hen as well. And going back on the calcium, if you have roosters and you're feeding a feed that has a lot of calcium in the feed, you could also be damaging your rooster and giving them problems with calcium because they cannot handle the calcium as well as the hens do. Mainly because they're not laying eggs, they can get an abundance of calcium and that can make them sick from it. So one thing we do like to do with our feed is fermentation. We only feed that to our birds. That helps a lot with the nutrition uptake. It will lower your costs on your feed just because your hens and roosters can absorb more of the nutrition from that feed. They will not eat as much. You can almost practically double the amount of feed that you have available to your birds just by fermenting. Okay, now that we talked about hen health, and we're now at the part of talking about our egg health. Egg health isn't just about making your hens healthy and having healthy eggs from that. You're hatching eggs, you're going to want to have in the best shape as you can. So there's certain things you're going to want to go through to ensure that they're ready for the incubator. One thing I will do is not use eggs to hatch unless they're 3 to 10 days old. 10 is the oldest we go. I'd prefer up to 7 days, but 10 is usually where we are. So with 10 days being the oldest, the other things you're going to look at is in that 3 to 10 days, how are you storing the eggs? You're going to want to make sure your temperature is controlled. If it's too dry, you could be losing too much moisture out of it. If it's too humid, you may not be losing any, which is fine with the humid part, I believe. But your temperature is going to be your most important part. We like to store eggs at or below 70 degrees, no colder than 55. The other things you want to think about with your eggs are the shape, size, things like that. But before handling your eggs, the other thing you want to consider is how dirty are your hands. You should wash your hands before you start handling them. You could have a potential bacteria on your hand or something that just soaks into the egg. Because eggs are porous, you want to have those thoughts in mind on the egg being porous. Now, one note I will say
before we get into it further, marker. I myself cannot stress enough how bad putting marker on eggs could possibly be. My own pet peeve, if you do it, that's fine. You keep doing what you want to do. But knowing how touchy hatching eggs can be, the slightest little thing like an alcohol marker or whatever other chemicals are in this marker, writing on it could be cleaning off part of the bloom that's the protective seal on the eggs. So if we're having problems with our eggs and you're using marker, maybe consider just using a pencil. It can't hurt to use a pencil. It's just, again, it's what we do. It's how we handle it. We just do not use marker on our eggs. So, again, wash your hands before handling your eggs, and then we'll look at some of the things on where we don't hatch. Things like eggs that are too rounded. So that one as an example, both ends having the round end on it. This one here is a bit larger, rounded. I will hatch this one. This is one of my large egg layers. This is a single yolk egg versus, some of our normal size eggs. But this will get hatched because it's what we're working on ourselves here at the farm. But if you find eggs that size, that way, check for double yolk. So like I said, again, large eggs. This is a double yolk. This is triple yolk or so. Not really sure. Just, these are very large eggs. This is a duck egg. And you see the size difference in them. So, got to be careful with that. So with the rounded ends, you also want to worry about ends that are pointy. So this is supposed to be more of a rounded, but it's a bit more pointy than it would be normally. This being a smaller egg, I won't hatch this because it's a bit small. This one and this one, calcium deposits. We won't hatch those. Now, if we had a little bit of calcium deposit on this one here, in this spot, a little bit of rub, you can rub that off. Not a big deal. But when you have a calcium deposit that's this big, or like this one, that's that big, there's potential where underneath this calcium isn't sealing the egg properly, so you get a little bacteria in there, cause the egg to go bad, which then in turn can cause your whole entire hatch to go bad. So there again, pick and choose what you're doing. This doesn't get hatched. Well, most of you know that as a fart egg or a fairy egg. Ones like this, I don't know if the camera will pick it up or not, but when you see it, it has a weird little bump on the top here, and it might not be easy for the camera to pick it up, but you can see the lines in here. This was most likely a hen that was in a bit more of a rush while laying or stressed out, and the egg just kind of got pushed together and caused a stress fracture in that area. So we wouldn't hatch that one because of having that crack and can cause bacteria problems. Then here again is another egg that has some stress fractures on it. But if, I don't know if you can see it, another reason why we candle every egg, this egg has air bubbles inside it. So I don't know if you can see them or not, but that won't get hatched, probably because there's bacteria in it already, and it won't do well, and it can screw up your hatch. So reasons for not doing eggs like this that are rounded or pointy on the ends like this, tends to make it a little harder for the chick to come out of the shell. So if they pip, they tend to not be able to make the rotation around to do the zip, to crack all the way. So I'm not telling you that won't hatch. I'm telling you, if you have an abundance of eggs and you're hatching, what's the point of taking the chance on this one? It's not a special egg. It's just an everyday, ordinary blue egg. You know, take and make an omelet out of it and be happy. Go on to the next one that has a better shape to it. You know, something that's gonna give you your better results, or that you don't have to worry about a bad egg screwing up your incubator. And that's why I say go between 3 and 10 days on your eggs. You're going to have bad eggs at some point in your hatching career if you do it enough times. It can happen. You're not going to catch every problem, but try and prevent it as much as possible.